Hello and welcome back, everybody. We are so excited to be here with our update for the Season 14 low-budget LCS. I almost said low-budget LCS championships, but well, actually they are the championships. We're finding out the champions. So that's technically the low-budget LCS championships. We are here. We are ready to go. We are very excited to give the update. Some of the updates hotter off the presses than others. Thank you all for bearing with us. I think Vega was in the bathtub. That was why we were super delayed or something along those lines. I'm not sure. So that's how that ended up happening. However, I'm joined as per usual by my three lovely analysts. So I've got with me Vega, Mr. Bathtub himself. How you doing today, bud?
Squeaky clean right now, ready to talk about some League of Legends and playoff action. Yeah. How's everybody else doing?
I think we're doing splendid. Valentine, how are you? Are you just as clean?
No, but my brother had this takeout box in the outside refrigerator for a while, and I don't know what was in it, but it's good.
Cool. So you're eating indeterminate food.
It's
Okay.
like I think it's like a quesadilla. It's got cheese and meat,
I feel like
and I think the outside is like a burnt tortilla.
yeah, that sounds quesadilla-esque to me. I don't know. Maybe this is one of those things where it's like, is a hot dog a sandwich kind of vibe. So I really don't feel like getting into that kind of stuff because I'm not in the mental headspace for that. Now that looks like a quesadilla. No, you know what it is? It
Right?
looks like one of those filled like pita roll situations.
Like
Oh,
grilled
maybe.
cheese.
I made a
Was it
frittata on accident.
Is that the burrito incident?
Yeah. Where I
Oh,
was supposed to be like a nice thin like sheet pan situation, and it ended up being like a good 4 inches thick. So I don't understand how I made like I fucked up a recipe so bad I made something different entirely, but that's how it goes. Lesh Force, how are you doing on this fine Sunday early evening?
So I'm gonna join Vega. I'm squeaky clean. Came back home, grabbed a shower before my series tonight. Everyone knows you gotta be squeaky clean for your playoff matches. Doing pretty good.
That must be why I never won any of those playoff matches because I always showed up as dirty as I probably could.
You beat me once
That's
though.
that's not true. That's not true, Jack. You've made the finals.
I've made the finals many times,
You
and
did
then
win.
by the time I got there,
Yeah.
it's tough. It was tough.
Big
What I
time.
will say is that I am the death leader in the low budget LCS. I confirmed that today. There is nobody with more deaths per game than me. So if you want to try to usurp me at this point and don't tell your team about it as you throw your playoff matches, you can try to go ahead and so that you can average over 9.5 deaths a season, and then you've successfully topped me, beat me. Anyway, moving on. We're gonna run through the standings as it were. We're gonna be taking a look at the playoff brackets as they stand so far today. We have a ton of matches tonight though, and so we are looking to after this show. You can meet some of us in the Red Zone channel in the Low Budget LCS Discord to start a little party of watching all those different games. So I'm personally super excited for it. I get to kick back with good people and watch good games in theory. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started right away with economy. So we're shifting over now. If you can't see the font, I did my best. Be nice to me. I'm sensitive. But sometimes some of the team names are going to be cut off. Some of them aren't. I think actually only one team name is cut off, and it's Mr. Chedd's party bus full of baddies because that team name has like 86 different characters in it. But like you give and you take, you give and you take. Anyway, let's take a look at these economy standings here. We've got all but one of the round of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 round of 8 matches to remain. So what's good? What's happening here? Anything jump off the playoff bracket to you guys or stand out in any particular type of way? Vega.
Yeah. Jumping out immediately. Sperm Whales 12 seed, getting a round one win. Nice upset there. I think a theme that's going to be across a lot of the leagues that we watched today is playoffs is a different beast than regular season, right? So really back and forth series there with Soybook. They get the 2-1 win and move on there. Yeah, setting up a Colony Sperm Whales matchup. And also on the top side, Imperial Marauders getting the upset against FE Arrows, setting up a 2% Marauders match with a lot of shared, history in that match, which will be very fun.
Yes, I think some of the Marauders teams were on Milk prior, correct, or something along those lines. So
Yep.
a bit of a, it's like they split off and they formed their own splinter group, and we're going to see what ends up happening there. Yeah, so Imperial Marauders, I think, was a 9 seed over 8 seed, so not as much of an upset as the Sperm Whales over Soy Milk. Les Force and Valentine, what stands out to you guys looking at this economy bracket? What do you guys think is going to happen?
I mean, you kind of look at the bracket. A lot of, I mean, we haven't seen, the best teams, quote unquote, in the group yet. The way Econ set up, top four had a bye, so 2%. Wavies, the Jarls, they're still waiting to see who they play, because I believe their opponents play tonight. And then the Colony, they've all been chilling. I think maybe the Colony are probably sitting pretty happy with Spoiled Milk losing. Nothing against Sperm Whales, but like if you're on paper, you're looking at a 5 versus 12. You probably would prefer to play against the 12, just kind of in a vacuum. But no, a couple really big matchups for quarterfinals. I think in particular, I'm looking at that top right, the Wavies versus OML versus everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That squad's a playoff regular. I think it was 2 seasons ago. Or no, well, they've been around like 3 seasons. They made playoffs every time.
Mm-hmm.
So they're a pretty strong team now down in economy. So I think that's probably the one that I'm the most interested in.
Yeah, when we have these playoff mainstays, it's always really interesting to see how they, shape out. Like a Panther Core team will make it to finals and then lose there. That's just the way that it goes. It's the way that the script gets written.
Yep.
I'm not gonna make the joke that I was about to make. Valentine, how about you? What are some of the things that stand out to you about this economy playoff bracket?
I think I think throughout the season there was a very clear kind of top four. So now they gotta, we're getting in as of next week's coming in. They're gonna basically get the chance to show why that top four was so solid, right? There's a chance that all four of them could meet each other in semifinals. We could get some upsets though. I think OML versus everybody is kind of kicking into gear. I played against them; they were very solid. Um, I think Jarls will have a tough matchup regardless of who wins between the Termites and the Cloud9, because Cloud9's mid laner, Gutsy Bat, absolute monster. But Tenacious Termites have a lot of different players who can be big time influences on the game, like Godzilla. So, and both that is going to be a tough one. Termites especially beat Jarls in the regular season, if I remember correctly. So that's going to be a tough matchup either way. And kind of, you have obviously Milk versus Marauders. You already talked about that one. Colony versus Sperm Whales. I think both teams have this energy of Colony obviously can get a little wild when Luffy's your jungler. That's just the case. And then the Colony and the Whales, that game, it feels like, and the Whales obviously have a bunch of different players who really feel like they can show up. So I'm really interested in how that goes. And I think Wavies versus OML is going to be two very, very solid teams who are going to be basically butt heads and go crazy.
Yeah, I want to say maybe one of these matches is tonight, or maybe more than one of these matches is tonight.
Yeah. Termites Cloud9.
Termites Cloud9, which is the last round of 16. How is it round of 16 if there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 18?
It would just be
It's round of 12 kind of, because 4 got to buy.
Okay. Well,
Semantics.
but I mean,
like a
yeah,
play-in,
semantics,
yeah.
right? Like, I mean, who knows? If you're looking to get up the brackets on your own screen, you can head to the info sheets for each of the leagues. There's a tab on the bottom for the playoff brackets, so you can go there. We're not cool enough. We're not high budget enough to have those commands where you can just like type the little like exclamation point bracket and have it come up. Maybe when we're with a medium budget LCS, we can get something like that going on. But so far, no dice. So we've got the Tenacious Termites. We've got Cloud9 to 5 tonight. Give me some of these thoughts on this matchup. What are we looking for here? It's Cloud9 looking to sort of punch a bit above their weight class, coming in as the 11th seed versus the 6th seed. So what are some of the things that we're looking out for? Do we expect this trend of upsets to sort of keep continuing on as we go through this playoff bracket? Or are we expecting things to shake out the way that the numbers would have us understand?
So I guess I can jump in and we can just kind of take a look back to a little over a month ago. These teams played in week 4, and the Termites were able to pick up a 2-0 at that point. Now, granted, it looks like Cloud9 to 5 kind of been scaling up the past couple of weeks. They've won their last 3 series in a row, and they actually took a game off the Colony the week after losing to the Termites. So maybe we're looking at a different roster, a different team now than we saw, a month ago. But at least on paper, the Termites should know, kind of what the winning formula is to take down Cloud9 to 5.
Yeah, and so what is it that what is it that this team is going to need to do to make some adjustments so that we're not necessarily seeing that sort of 2-0 matchup, or how can these teams sort of bend and flex and adjust to sort of accommodate for the extra information they've got in the past few weeks?
I think largely it's a give and take. I mean, buys a lot of times. Sometimes you hear different, schools of thought on if a buy is good or bad. And one, if you're playing each week and you're in the habit of playing each week, that sometimes having that week off can be, tough. Because you take a week off, maybe there's a patch last week, there's going to be a patch this next Wednesday. Maybe you're not in the same sync of when you were playing together and things like that. And sometimes scrims and flex queue and stuff doesn't replicate that. But also there's the other end where you do get to watch an entire series where teams can't hold stuff back sometimes, like regular season, where they have to show their cards. It's playoff, right? They have to show whatever they've cooked up to try and win a series. So it really is on if the preparation is really good for Jarls, or any of the teams that are waiting in that second round. If their preparation, if they have those systems set up where their scrims were hyper productive and they're able to watch this and take things away from it. But yeah, I think personally, Tenacious Termites, Cloud9 to 5, both very dangerous coming out of that. Not a team I'd want to face either way coming out of that round.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those situations where any team can really beat any team, especially when we have these sort of like closer in seed or closer in skill level matchups. So I'm personally pretty excited to see how things go. Les Force, you have a point.
Yeah, so I was just like I said, they've been on a bit of a heater, so I kind of went back real quick just to double check kind of what their formula has been to win. And for Cloud9 to 5, it seems super simple. Get your carries ahead, get them in a spot to pop off, and they win the game. That's Soldigs at 80 carry and Riot Gutsy Bet. I'm assuming that's an actual Rioter.
It works on the fighting game.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
You take a look at their match results from the past couple of weeks, and every game that they're winning, either Gutsy Bat has like double-digit kills, or Soldigs is like tremendously ahead of their lane opponent. So for this team, it seems super straightforward, and that is like a pretty winning formula in Econ. Get your star players in a spot to succeed, and just kind of set them up with big wombo ults. That's kind of what I'm expecting if they want to pull off the upset. And I guess the question is, do the Termites, who I know they're coached by Ninja, longtime LBLCS entity. Curious to see if they've kind of picked up on that and kind of what their answer is going to be into that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think one of the big things with Termites, right? Momentum is real. They are 5-0 in the last 5 weeks. They are rolling going into it, and they're rolling going into the playoffs. So I think it's going to be really hard. I think Godzilla top. The Milkers might not like me for this one, but I think Godzilla top the best top laner in economy. I think he's so good, and he's just a constant menace. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, Val, you're sort of our eyes on the ground perspective here. From your your experience with some of these teams, have you been able to face off or scrim against some of the teams that we're talking about here?
Yes, I played Cloud9 to 5 and Termites in the regular season. And both of these teams are very good. Cloud9 to 5's mid laner is genuinely no joke. And the same goes for Termites. Termites' whole roster definitely feels like they're going to come at you. I think I played against their sub mid laner, and it was still a really, really tough match for me. And I think there is such a both of these teams have ways to beat one another, so I'm excited. I'm really excited to see how they match up with each other. I'm gonna have my eyes glued on that match tonight.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a lot of good information about this Termites Cloud 9 to 5 matchup coming up. What do we know about the Rat Kingdom Jarls, who are sort of waiting hungrily for both of these teams that we're spending a little bit of time hyping up? The Tenacious Termites with a sort of more consistent pattern through the season versus Cloud 9 to 5, sort of more on a bit of a heater coming in. With this team ahead, the Jarls, I'm pretty sure it's Jarls because I think it's like
Yeah, it is
the
Jarls, yeah.
Viking.
You don't think it's
captain.
Jarls?
I don't think it's
Yeah.
Jarls.
No, you're.
You don't
I
think
don't
it's
like
Jarls?
Jarls. I think Jarls sounds nicer as anyway.
Yeah,
right?
because
So I
it's
would
like
do
a
that
Viking
instead.
thing,
Well,
right? And they pronounce the
That
J's
is
like
how
Yos.
it's pronounced. Yes, that
Yos.
that
Like,
is how the word
what?
is pronounced. But Youngle?
Youngle.
Yeah. I like Youngle too. Like if it was just
I
called
do too. I
Youngle,
think it
I'd
just
be
sounds
like,
better.
yeah, Michael
I just
Jackson.
think it sounds
Like, come
better.
on, like it goes hand in hand. I mean, Jarls haven't played Cloud 9 to 5, but I also think that's a matchup that they're not too super scared of, right? I think Truth and VV are two very scary members. Like VV and Jareth are both in intense bot lane. I don't know, and I don't think they'd be very scared of Soul Digs, right? So they would definitely start like kind of throw the kitchen sink. At Gutsy Bat and kind of force someone else to beat them. But they did play the Termites, and that was a tough series. That was a tough series for them. I know Pickle Hater has some choice words about his own performance in that series. You can ask him. But but I definitely think they're hungry to do that. They're hungry to get that one back in blood. Right? So I think if it's a game against Cloud9, I think they'd be confident, and if it's a game against Termites, I think they'll be engaged, right? They'll be on fire. They'll want that really bad. So, yeah.
Yeah, Vivisol is a returning economy champion, if I remember correctly, which is really a sort of hazardous sentence for me to say. Rico Suave saying that Pickle Hater was limit testing. Yeah, we can appreciate that. Well, I can appreciate that at least. So, some people play the game in different ways. I prefer to play the game the right way. Some people prefer to play the game boring. But hey, it is what it is. So that's sort of like this lower right hand corner of the bracket, which is we have a little bit of a interestingness tonight. But what about these other matchups here? Let's pivot sort of to the other corner of the bracket here with this 2% Milk versus Imperial Marauders. This is our first seed versus I think the 9th seed is what I said earlier. Vega, can you give us a bit of an inside perspective, as much as you can, of course, for this series?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very interesting series. I mean, the Imperial Marauders roster is 5 players that at some point or another played on Milk on the 2%, roster versus 2% team that's been very good this year, number 1 seed coming in. But I think Marauders is a team you can't ever overlook. They've got a lot of people who have perennially made semifinals, finals on that roster. A lot of really good players, a lot of name stays and low budget LCS. So experience matters a lot come playoff time. And both of these teams have kind of had the time to look forward at each other, right? 2% has had the time to, kind of watch that last matchup, see what Imperial Marauders like to do, and vice versa. Imperial Marauders, I mean, there's plenty of data on 2%, right? A lot of their games streamed by myself in VODs that are public. So, I mean, you can go back and watch a lot of what they do. So I think this matchup has a lot of spice to it. It's got a lot of, history in it. It's kind of one of those playoff matchups you want to put your eyes on. But I do think, I'm a big fan of, seeds come off once playoff starts. You know what I mean? Once you're in the bracket against somebody, it doesn't really matter, as we've seen in a lot of other matches. So I'll be looking forward to that one.
Yeah, and with two teams that sort of have so much information about each other, I think that makes it really interesting. And you were talking a little bit earlier about holding on to strats, and then like when playoffs comes, like it's playoffs. Like you can save the strat for next season if you want, but it's sort of like holding flash for next game. So we'll see how this goes. And as Pickle Hater is saying, the Marauders are sort of on a bit of a hot streak. They started off 1-4, and they're now sort of 5-4, I think, including their most recent playoffs win. So they're feeling the momentum. 2% has been dominating throughout the season. So we'll really see what shows up. What about over down onto the bottom left corner here with the Colony versus Sperm Whales? Tell me a little bit about these teams and these matchups. I think we're talking about Luffy just sort of always making a game interesting, no matter what interesting looks like is pretty variable, but interesting nonetheless. So what should we expect from this matchup here between these two teams?
Luffy scares me to watch play League.
Yeah.
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 Holy moly.
It just is like whatever the opposite of like methodical. It's just like the complete antithesis. And it works. I mean, Colony, they've had a pretty good season. I was talking a little bit with their captain, Acamped, recently, talking about kind of like their strategies and how they've been working on the map rotations and like the kind of the meat and potatoes of playing League of Legends, not the hand stiffing, but more so the map states and stuff like that. So they're coming in feeling pretty confident. They haven't faced off against Sperm Whales to my knowledge, unless they did like a scrim or something. I was just checking the standings, and they have not faced off. But the Sperm Whales, last season they played in LBLCS, they were kind of like the wild card of economy. They just pull off a massive upset in Soy Milk. I wouldn't be surprised if we see an upset here again in round 2. But you're fighting wild card with wild card. Because any game with Luffy in it, it's just a complete toss up. You might be getting full AP Zac. You might get lethality Jarvan. Who knows what's to come?
Yeah, I remember playing a game with Luffy at one point, and I believe he was playing Zac, and the call was quiet for a little bit, and then at one point, I hear him sort of charging up the elastic slingshot, and he goes, "All right, good luck, everybody," and then sends himself into the enemy team. At which point, it was sort of on the rest of us to be like, "Oh shit." So yeah, I mean, keeps things spicy. Valentine, was there something you wanted to say about this matchup here before we start, before we pivot over to the top right corner to talk about Wavies versus OML?
Yeah, these are two teams that I feel are very charged by their junglers, right? Stantry, formerly Energy T, on the Sperm Whales. We've seen him be an absolute battery, and it, pun not intended, but an energy source for the Sperm Whales squad. Whereas obviously you've got Luffy in the Colony. I think it's going to be, but I also think it's going to be about the supports. Yeah, IDK for the Sperm Whales has been knockout, has been one of the best supports in the league. And Acamped, there are not a lot of words you can use to describe Acamped that haven't already been used throughout the many seasons of LBLCS. He's always been solid. He's always he is a captain. He's not the captain of the team. That's Luffy, but he's like captain of camp. He is always going to be there. He's going to be affecting the game actively and always. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and Acamped has been hanging around around like Pantacore and that kind of stuff. So it's hard to pick who to root for in some of these situations, but got to go for the alum. I think is my general take on things, but also like it just makes things fun. So I think that matchup will also be really interesting to see happen, and we'll have to see how these results keep shaking out. We've got one more matchup that we haven't really talked that much about, which is Wavies versus OML versus everybody, which is a bit of a counterintuitive sounding sentence. It's not a three-way up there; it's actually just two teams. So what are we looking at with these two teams? We were talking about OML being a bit of a playoff mainstay. Valentine, you just faced off against them. Would you care to sort of start us off with a little bit of commentary on this team?
Yeah, OML is, I've mentioned behind closed doors and to people with the door open that OML is a difficult matchup for my team, right? Because we're a little bit off the wall, we're disorganized. OML move as a pack, they attack as a pack. They can make your life really hard if your communication and your vision is good, right? But even if your fundamentals are all down, they can always try and out team fight you. And I think Waves in Motion has not like maybe not exactly the same style because I haven't played against them fortunately, but I think they're very solid, and I think they play a similarly strong game. So I'm really curious on how these two teams are going to butt heads because if both of these teams show strong team fighting, you know, and show strong team fighting and kind of that capability to move across the map and be scary, um, I am so excited to see how they play against each other. But
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. And I love it when teams can sort of really find that that groove and sort of click and really move as a pack, like you said. I think that's a very good way to describe it. Vega and Les Forest, other thoughts, especially on this team Wave is in motion. You know, I don't know as much about them. So what are some of the things that the uninformed viewer should know about this team looking at that matchup?
Big things. If anybody hasn't seen the OML versus everybody against Panther Core Aces match, talk about a banger game one. The game one's probably one of the most fun games I've ever watched of League of. Unfortunately, yeah, for Val probably doesn't want to think about that game, but what a game! Holy moly! And one thing that I've seen, over years of watching a lot of competitive esports is when you have a series like that, like OML had against like Panther Core, where you have these crazy games and you end up getting the victory. Sometimes it can be hard to get yourself back up for the next match, right? Where you have this like big back and forth match. So I'll be really interested to see kind of what that game one looks like against Waves in Motion, right? Because when you have a big win like that, a big emotional, like things happen like that, getting yourself back up in the next match can be hard. And also, Waves is going to be, waiting, watching that. But I think in feigning weeks, like Waves had, dropped a series there. They had shown a little bit of weakness that maybe early in the season we had not seen. So I think this match is closer than people will think it is. I think it's more wide open than if you were just checking the standings and looking at seeds, you would think it is.
Yeah, and like I said, honestly, seeding matters a little bit for a bit of the eye test, but when you're looking at these matchups, like any team can beat any team. So we're gonna, and we see some of that later on in these brackets. So we'll do that. Les Force, any closing thoughts on economy before we push on up into commercial?
I mean, it's just a theme that we're going to talk about probably as we get to later groups for sure, or later leagues. But in LBLCS, it oftentimes doesn't matter how dominant you are in the regular season. Playoffs are a single elim, and there have been plenty of teams. Thinking back to like Fried Chicken, turning off the top of my head. There was one season where like every single first seed lost in financial. I can remember, and it's just like it doesn't matter how strong you are.
Seed, right?
Well, that season it was like the one. It was like the groups with like three.
Oh yeah.
When
Anyway,
it had the
A B C D.
semantics.
Jack.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
Finish
the
this
point
point.
is you can dominate the regular season, but if you're not locked in that day of, you don't stand a chance. And so Wavy's just like be on your toes. OML is a pretty solid team. They've played together a long time. And yeah, I'm just kind of excited to see these banger econ matchups.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see, and part of that is going to be in the red zone tonight, so we hope to see you there. Speaking of see you there, let's move on over to commercial here as I flip on over the screen. I don't know what kind of transition that was, so don't at me. Where we've got a bunch of these matches that are pretty interesting, and not as many played. So commercial teams go get playing your matches, but I'm certain that there's at least one or two of them tonight. So what are some of the things that immediately stand out to you about this bracket? It looks like the top right teams are good about scheduling and getting their games in. But what are some other things that are a little bit more analytical as we take a look at these commercial teams facing off to take on their season 14 championship?
I mean, I believe that all the games are tonight, starting
all
at
all of them?
Commercial festival.
believe
Yeah,
all
of
commercial
them.
festival tonight.
All of them.
Oh.
Literally, the NX Angel is correct.
There's
five
five?
commercial games
Yeah.
tonight.
So that's
Holy
where
shit.
we don't
And
have
this
the,
bracket will be completed out round one.
they just were waiting as long as possible. With the commercial playoffs, there's no pushing it back. You got to get your games in. So they all squeezed it on Sunday. Should be a banger for people who like commercial. Of course, I've always loved commercial. I've got a series of my own tonight, so I'm not gonna be able to watch. But a lot of exciting matchups across the board here, I think.
Well, you just have to make it a quick 2-0 so you can get on over to us as soon as you can.
True.
Right? So if you lose that first game, I got a bad news for you, bud.
That's all right.
The booth run to at midnight. Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm pretty certain that's gonna happen.
Jack
I'm
will
pretty
be
sure all of us will be.
well-
Yeah, I'll be fine,
well
man.
tucked in.
Well,
Well tucked in, buddy.
Yeah, I'll be
I'll step up.
a little the snoozing booth. No, that doesn't make any sense at all. All right, well, so what are some of the matchups that we have tonight? Then we've got Pill County versus Apollo from our top left corner, and then we've got the matchups from the bottom half of the bracket here. So what are some of the matches that we should be paying attention to? Tell me a little bit about this. Pill County Pirates versus Apollo Gaming. Pill County, I believe, are the team that really went like
Team to beat.
bananas, right? Like we
Team
were
to
like
beat.
we were like, all right, I don't know, like maybe underdog, maybe just sort of like random. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But then they end up like just like sweeping through the league. So tell me about this matchup that they have versus Apollo Gaming.
Yeah, Hill County Pirates led by Jungler Dlash on D, not to be confused with Spermwell's ADC Dlash on D. These and them and Juggernaut have been monsters for this Hill Country Pirates team. And that's a pot 4 team raising, just absolutely raising through the league. And there is a lot to say, but when you have standout players like that, the guys across from you, the team across from you, has to lock in and figure out a game plan for them, and then kind of move and adapt to that as it goes. So I'm really, really, really excited to see how this game goes, because I think we could be, see how Apollo Gaming comes out. I feel like they have some solid players of their own, and they just have to come out and be like, hey, they may be number one, but we don't really give a shit. Let's bring the fight to them regardless.
Yeah, there's sort of the underdogs with really nothing to lose here as they start to take on the juggernauts at the top of the standings here. What are some things that we should know about Apollo Gaming? I mean, we've been talking about Pill County Pirates throughout the entire season. They've been demolishing. But what about Apollo Gaming? Where do their strengths lie? What do we see when we look at their matches? What do we see when we look at their team ranks and all that kind of fun stuff? What are some of the things that the viewers should know about Apollo Gaming before going into Red Zone tonight?
So with Apollo Gaming, of course, they came off the wait list. I want to say 3 weeks in or so. So like kind of midway through. On paper, kind of statistically, their best performing player so far has been Wovorn, who's the mid laner. Kind of just casually going through some of their matches as Val was talking there. Relatively strong laner. It looks like consistently kind of up in CS. Has a gold advantage. Looks like a pretty strong player. They seem to like play a lot of like tank jungles from what I'm seeing. A lot of like engaged supports. Kind of the not the most exciting stuff. But I think they came in with a losing record. Like they took over a spot with a losing record and then made playoffs. So they're on the come up.
Mm-hmm.
Massive challenge tonight against Pill County Pirates.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to see if they can lock in for it. Yeah, it looks like I said, Wovorn is pretty far and away, like at least by like the the stats quote unquote that we've got in on our standing sheet, seems to be their like best statistical performer. So that's probably where my eyes are lying.
Yeah, and I just want to I really appreciate the teams that step up and are willing to take on a losing record when we inevitably have. There's always a few teams each season where they lose a couple of series and they figure maybe this isn't for them, or like this isn't the kind of environment they want, and they drop out. And being able to pull teams who are saying, yeah, well, sure, we'll take an 0-2 start, that's fine, and go in, and so we'll be sending some good vibes in your direction as you take on the underdog matchup there, Apollo Gaming, led by Woovern in the mid lane. Val and Vega, any other things that you guys want to add about Apollo Gaming or Pill County Pirates before we start looking to the Rat Kingdom versus OML matchup? All right, let's look to the Rat Kingdom versus OML matchup. We've got the Lords versus the original Geezers. That was pretty quick. So a couple of organizations. I think they both had representatives in the economy bracket, and so these are their commercial squads. What do we need to know about these teams? What's going on here?
I was just gonna say, Rat Kingdom Lords, I think, probably a team that early in the season I had pegged as being one of the top teams in the league, did look a little bit more vulnerable down the stretch, but still, 5 seed versus a 12 seed, I think. But all the OML teams over the course of the year, one thing I've learned is you can never overlook any OML team. Like, they're very
Yep.
sound fundamentally. They're very good at playing team fight things. They're very good at, playing the late game. All of their squads kind of talk with each other, work with each other on their strategy and stuff like that. So I think definitely this would be one I would circle as like a trap game. Mostly just because kind of the seeds 3 through 5, all those 6 and 2 teams where their overall match record is really good, but their game record, you can see that in most series, they're 2-1 wins, things like that. So it is a best of 3 first round of playoffs. It's not that hard to all of a sudden, give up one game and you're at a 1 game to elimination. And I think this is your textbook example of like, hey, this could be a trap game because in overall like game wins, they're only separated by 3 game wins.
Oof.
So sounds like you're sort of expecting this to be a closer matchup, or just a matchup where the teams might be on a bit more equal footing, especially as compared to the matchup that we talked about prior with Pill County versus Apollo.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see this go either way, and I think that's going to be a theme in commercial. Is that a lot of the middle of the pack here, even teams with really good match records, the game records are really close, and you can see it's just one bad draft, one bad decision in a game could flip a series one way or the other.
Absolutely. Valentine, any thoughts that you want to add about these two squads here before we look over to Dogs That Bark versus Fifth Spectrum?
I think both teams kind of coming into playoffs are looking to kind of restate their presence, right? I don't think, obviously Lords, I believe, ended the season. Well, Lords ended on a 3-game series. A 3-game series against Sensei Randall's and a 2-1 win over Sensei Randall's and then a 2-1 loss over Naughty, right? So they're kind of coming in to look for more reassurance. Meanwhile, OML came in off back-to-back losses against Wonderkind and We on the Nile River. So I think both of these teams are they're looking to use the series to reestablish their balance, right? If OML takes it, they're going to be stabilized and, to me, reinvigorated to kind of go on a run. And if Lords can kind of restabilize out the gate and they will look like a very scary team going into the rest of the playoff bracket.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think it's one of those things where when we've got one of these like lethal teams that can really sort of assassinate any other team out of the playoff bracket. Seeing them start to move along as they go through their matchups ends up being a scary sight to see if you're starting to see that shark is swimming a little bit closer to your boat. Speaking of sharks, Dogs That Bark, that's dogs that
No.
shabark. Bashark.
No.
They're
Sharks
animals.
that bark.
Shark
Literally.
to bark. Shark to.
Sharks
These
that bark.
matchups, these teams in this matchup here. Yeah. What do we need to know about Fifth Spectrum versus Dogs That Bark, in order to really truly appreciate the matchup that they have going on there?
I mean, we saw a lot of Fifth Spectrum, I believe, kind of earlier in the season. I think they got streamed like three times, like not intentionally, just they kind of just got the lucky draw with the timings and stuff. Obviously they came up from Econ, from last season. Snowflake Gecko, kind of like their quote unquote superstar player, hasn't been as like otherworldly as they were last season, but they've still been playing pretty well. Jisp in the bot lane has been playing well. Every time I've watched them, they've been playing these like 45, 50-minute bangers. So that's always exciting to watch. And then Dogs That Bark, I mean, the story begins and ends with Matt C. Linoleum's favorite player in the low budget LCS. This dude is a monster in the AD carry position, striking fear into anyone. And so for Fifth Spectrum, I think the game plan is super simple. You shut down Matt C, you're moving on to the next round. And if you can't, you might not be going. So curious what their approach there is.
And you know what? I'll say both of these teams I definitely feel like, because say what you will about Snowflake Gecko, but the only player in commercial with the pentakill. The only player in commercial with the pentakill, but to me, right on the hills, Matsi leads commercial in double kills, in triple kills, and it has 2 quadras, which is good for Tide. at second. So you have two, to me, you have two players who are going to win the game if they can get ahead. Um, the thing is, though, I definitely feel like so far this season, we've seen other dogs barking. Level 3 Scuttle and Psychotic Chainsaw immediately off the page to me have had great seasons of their own. Their top laner's always been solid, and the same goes for their mid laner, right? But it's going to be really interesting to see how they play because Matt C is obviously probably one of the best ADCs commercial will see. Period. Um, but I also think Snowflake Gecko has a great opportunity to make a massive splash here and take down. Obviously, Snowflake Gecko and Fifth Spectrum have a chance to make a massive splash and take down Dogs That Bark, who are kind of a commercial playoff mainstay at this point.
And when you have like one player in that way who really stands out, being able to get like a supporting cast of players, like as you mentioned, like Psychotic Chainsaw and some of the other members of the team, like being able to step up to the plate alongside, the somebody who's sort of in a bit more of a visible carry role, in this case, literally, it really ends up leveling up a team. So we'll have to see how this matchup keeps shaking out. What do we need to know about the other team in this matchup before we sort of shift over to the right side of this bracket here?
I will say one of the things about Fifth Spectrum, you will definitely zone in. I think we've zoned in on Gecko pretty hard here, but Silky, their top laner, is also a monster.
Mm.
So I definitely feel like this matchup is going to be. You can look at it two ways, right? It'll either be kind of Fifth Spectrum's solo lanes versus um, uh Dog That Bark, kind of their carry and supporting roles. Or you can kind of flip it and say, okay, well, can Dogs That Bark's solo lanes kind of match up, hold their ground, and shut down Fifth Spectrum solo lanes? Or can the opposite side for Fifth Spectrum, right? Um and Penguin and Icarus, can they hold up to Matt C, Psychotic Chainsaw, and Love Their Scuttle, right? So it feels like this is going to be a really good game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be super exciting. So I'll be looking forward to watching that with a good group of pals. As we shift over to the right side of the bracket, we've got the naughty question marks over TV Avalanche as our first remaining matchup on this side of the bracket. These are familiar names at this point. Naughty and TV being big orgs for the LBLCS. The question marks and the Avalanche squads in particular having some history to them. So tell me a little bit about these teams. Perhaps, Last Force, you can provide us a bit of the inside scoop here as Avalanche are TV affiliated.
Yeah, I mean, so TV, they've kind of not had. I mean, again, Vega puts the pressure on them, right? Calling them the favorites coming in, and they're coming in as like the 11th seed this time around. But they're still feeling pretty confident. I think they've ran a couple different roster iterations throughout the season, and I think the one they've kind of settled on right now is kind of the one they preferred. I think Witless in the jungle is like pretty strong. Plays a lot. Actually plays a pretty aggressive play style, plays like the volley bear, plays like things that want to get in your face and kind of skirmish a lot, which will be interesting going into it's Ty, who those who've been around know that Ty likes to play, your Viego, your Graves, your Hecarim, these like AD kind of aggressive junglers. So I think that should be a really interesting matchup in particular. I think you have Brikachu in the mid lane, pretty recognizable name, has played now a couple seasons in LBLCS. Just really kind of across the board on the naughty question marks. Just a lot of people that have been around for a while at this point. And so yeah, I don't know. I think again, this is one of those things where it's like my mind might say one thing, my heart says another. I certainly think TVA is good enough to pull off the quote unquote upset. But I think it'll just come down to can they shut down this like top side that the question marks kind of have in place, because if you haven't paid attention, Rin will play literally anything to enable Ty. Talking zillion top lane for Hecarim, like that type of debauchery. So I'm curious to see what the scoop is.
Yeah, we'll have to see how things shake out there. You put Vega on the spot a little bit, saying putting pressure on Avalanche. So I'll allow Vega to give a response there before pivoting over to Val for our final thoughts on this matchup.
Yeah, it's just kind of a heartbreaker matchup for me. I'm a big fan of both of these teams. Obviously, noted. I think TVA is the number 11 seed in this whole bracket. Easily, I don't even think there's competition for it. But I do think a lot of the points that Les Force made here are true. I think Naughty, outside of even just top lane with Rin, Pikachu is full on willing to play the Karma mids, the things like that to empower their jungler to be able to do things. They have a pool that's sometimes non-standard, which if you're not prepped to play against that, it can catch you off guard. And if they do get tie rolling, it can be very hard to stop. But I do think this iteration of TVA, the roster they've kind of settled on, is strong. I think that both teams have plenty of an idea of how the other plays. So it should be spicy. And I do think, we get into these 11 versus 6 matchup. There's not a huge gap like we mentioned before in actual, games in one versus. So I do think Naughty should be favored coming in. I do think their style is a little bit more refined. That roster's been together longer. But again, wouldn't surprise me if my goats TVA, were able to pull off an upset.
Yeah, and we'll have to see how these things shake out. And as you mentioned, this is another one of those situations where it's teams that have faced off against each other before, and players who know each other. So it'll be interesting to see how the matchup continues to fall. And so we'll see what happens later on tonight. Valentine, any closing thoughts about the Naughty question marks versus TV Avalanche matchup before we take a look at Spoiled Milk versus the LPP boys?
I think if you are a longtime LBLCS fan, this is probably your game of the night. I mean, both of these,
Mhm.
two solid orgs in Naughty TV playing each other. A lot of recognizable faces, right? Rin, it's Ty, Brick2, with oh, this is so bad. I forgot the name of their support.
Well, don't look at
For
me.
Naughty, Green Leak.
It's Green League,
Yes,
yeah.
Green League. Thank you.
It's having a
Green
really
League, and
good
then
season.
yeah, but like has had a standout season, and on the opposite side, with Avalanche, Full Metal, Igabajif, Asuna, Nepet, Priest, right? All these players who I think who the league is familiar with. It's kind of, I think it'll be a good game, right? I'm very excited for it tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, like these teams having a lot of history, these players having a lot of history. It's one of the things that I enjoy about the LBLCS. So we'll have to see how things go. Let's take a look at this Spoiled Milk and LPP boys matchup here, and the natural place to start would be to try to get a bit of an inside scoop here from Vega. What can you tell us about this Spoiled Milk team?
I do think they're a team that lives to cause stress. I think they're
Yep.
the antithesis of structured play. They are very vibes gaming. And funnily enough, Spoiled Milk and LPP faced off earlier this year. Banger series, 3-game series. Spoiled wins game 3, gets the 2-1 win against them, but was very back and forth. I do think the bot lane for Spoiled is the area to circle, right? Dose and Hoover have been very aggressive, pretty good laning together. I think Dose is in the top 5 for kills per game this split, and Hoover very high up on a lot of stats things. But the question in this series will be, will that aggression be punished? Right? They are a team that plays very fast paced. They like to make plays. They will drop waves to 5-man bot lane, to 5-man top lane at random points in the game. And LPP boys showed during their series before, at times they can punish that and turn the game. So the question tonight will be, who's more prepared? Is there something special cooked up for Spoiled, or is LPP boys got something that they're ready for that style? And as I've said now multiple times, in commercial, who knows? Because there are a lot of 2-1s this season, and it is really hard to beat a team 2 times in a row with the same strategy.
Absolutely. The losing team almost gets like a bit of an advantage there in terms of having more exposed for what they can remedy or adjust moving forward. Whereas the winning team needs to not only keep the momentum going, but also make sure to be able to be flexible enough to counteract whatever adjustments their former opponents are cooking up for off of that. Les Force, what are some of your thoughts about this matchup? In particular, looking at the LPP boys to sort of give another side of the equation here.
Yeah, I mean LPP boys, they've had a relatively solid split. They come in kind of in the middle of the pack. They played last season, I believe, made playoffs and were relatively solid. I was trying to go back and see kind of what the matchup a couple of weeks ago, because these teams did face off, kind of what that looked like. Um, I don't think, at least from my recollection, and maybe I am for sure misremembering, but I feel like LPP boys are more of a like sum of their parts type of team rather than there being like a, like there isn't like a Matt C. There isn't like a, our whole game plan needs to be to shut down this person. I think looking at I mean, Zanny Granny is on paper their like best statistical performer who's the support. So I think it's more of just like this team plays the team pretty well. I believe they're all kind of friends, if I remember from like a stream that they've been on before. Obviously pretty goofy name, so would go kind of hand in hand. So I think for them, it's just going to come down to, do they have that team play? Do they have that synergy? It's going to be tough going into a team coached by Vega, of course.
Whoa.
Coached by
No,
Vega.
I'm not involved in this team.
If
They're all
Vega coached-
whatever happens on the Rift with them is their own making.
If
Oh,
Vega
so
coached this
like
game,
Quite
I
the
think
PR
he'd be
statement.
Yeah, you get to claim the credit if they win.
I'm
and if
clarifying
yeah.
now. Clarifying now. I have not coached this team. Whatever they do, if they succeed, it's all them. If they lose, it wasn't me.
Fair enough. You get to claim the credit and deny the the fallback. It's a
I
win-win.
coach soy milk.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Interesting.
There we go. Yeah, let me go ahead and get that out of the way now.
Well, in that case, I mean, I'm still curious just to see. Like I said, LPP boys seem to just play his team pretty well, and in playoffs, that is typically a pretty winning strat. Pick Wombo ults, outperform the team fight, win the game. It's a winning strategy. We've seen many times in econ, many times in commercial, probably many times in financial as well.
Yeah, and I think like another element of it is that like with playoffs, it'll sort of like it like heightens the pressure. Because there's more on the line. Like your season is over if you lose. And so if you just have one or two like standout players, then that's more of an opportunity for the pressure to really dull down the impact that those players can have. Whereas if your team is successful because it's a sort of more gestalt, like greater than the sum of its parts kind of situation, then it's you're relying on the other four members of your team a little bit more there. So I don't know. I think that there's something nice about that community and friendship and teamwork and camaraderie and rah rah rah. Anyway, Valentine, if you are let's say that you are on the other like potentially going to face one of these two teams, right? You're looking up at LPP boys. You're you're looking at this spoiled milk team, and you're seeing them that they're going to be in the next matchup. Which team would you rather face? Head in hands is the reaction that I'm getting now. So
Spoiled Milk is obviously I've played with the jungler and support of Spoiled Milk. Played with them last season on a team that shall not be named.
oh, it was named,
And
wasn't it?
one thing, it sure
It had a
was
name.
named. It had a name for sure. But the biggest thing to me about it was in playing with them and what I see from playing with them that's absolutely and absolutely has carried over is this team is wild. You know, LPP boys. Um, you guys, both these teams are so strong, are so wild that when we get into this game, whenever it starts, I guess tonight, right? Whenever we get into this game and it starts, man, it's gonna send us for a it's gonna send us for a trip because these are both teams. I think it was mentioned earlier that LP Boys is very much a sum of their parts team. I think the same goes for Spoiled Milk. They have big time playmakers, right? I believe in Hoover, in Dose, in Kaz. Well, I don't know how much we can call Ivern and Tarek playmakers, but
to the extent that
Kaz
they are
holds it down.
playmakers.
To the extent that they are playmakers, Kaz makes plays. And obviously on the other picks, I don't know if he's unveiled the cane that much this season, but he makes things happen. Toter, Tots, and Hornbornix absolutely hold it down. I think they're the 3 seed for a reason. It feels like they're very much an amplification of their own individual talents. So I'm very excited to see how they come out looking against LPP Boys, who I think is a very similar team structure wise. And so a team that isn't afraid to get down and dirty with them.
Yeah, and when you have these like really volatile teams, one, it's very interesting to see a volatile team go against a team that is more structured or stable in its play, because it's sort of like, okay, like which style is going to come out on top. It is also really fun to see two volatile teams face off against each other, because then it's like, all right, who's going to be crazier? It's sort of like a Joker and Harley Quinn type situation. So pretty excited to see how things shake out for that. That'll wrap us for commercial. Let's head on up over into financial. And as we're taking a look at this playoff bracket, this is the big one for me, because if you look at the top left and you look at the top right, the first and the second seeds were both usurped by the 16th and 15th seeds. So tell me a little bit about how this bracket looks without Sisters of the Loam and without the Five Musketeers in it.
I talked about it a little bit earlier. I mean, it's a financial classic. Going in as the top seed, all that matters is that day of. And that Sisters of the Loam series just happened right before we hopped on the booth. Was able to catch a little bit of the series. Looked very, very competitive. Even that little bit of that game 3. Really just kind of came down to a couple big team fights. The Yone in particular from a fresh start.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, T1 Zeus
How did
living
they
up to
get
the
him, dude?
moniker. Yeah, how
Right?
how
Yeah.
how do they afford that salary here at the low budget LCS? No, it's the bracket's looking a lot more wide open now. The top 2 teams are down. Could definitely be some upsets to continue on the horizon.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting, and I can only imagine being, in the position of Blue Lobster or Wheaton Sons, where you're sort of like, oh my god, I got to go against like the number 1 or the number 2 seed, even if I win, now that I've won my match, and then all of a sudden it's like, holy fuck, what's this? Who am I facing now? I can imagine that the scouting might have to shift, and all that kind of fun stuff. So it should be very exciting to see. Vega, can you tell us a little bit about, what goes through your mind from like a prepping perspective when all of a sudden all of your planning has to shift because you're suddenly going against a team you didn't expect to?
Well, it could be two things, right? If you're sure in your own style, a lot of times it's a sigh of relief of like, okay, hey, we don't have to prep for it. But also, you're prepping for the team that beat them. So there is a little bit in your mind of like, hey, that team just beat the person who I thought was for sure to win. Now my prep for them has to double back, right? Maybe your plans for that shift, and for a lot of these teams, you get like one scrim day a week, and maybe if you're lucky, a VOD review day. So if you've been prepping for what you thought was an opponent, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're not playing them, we're going to be playing a different team. A lot of times teams don't have a lot of time to adjust, which I think playoffs ultimately does come down to the teams that know their own styles and have their own identity, and whoever they're against doesn't really matter. They're, at a base level playing their own style and enforcing that will onto another opponent. But yeah, I mean, even for just teams that aren't even close to the side of the bracket now, these teams that were like 4 or 5 seeds that are now like, oh my gosh, we could win a title. Like we thought, these top 2 teams were then. Now you're in that wheelhouse of, hey, anybody could win, now. But yeah.
I mean, it's super exciting, especially it sort of it almost like it opens up the matches a little bit more. It's like sort of inspires hope, because the 16th and 15th seeds are advancing despite the odds being literally stacked against them. So if they can win out, then anybody can win out, and it really becomes anybody's season 14 championship to claim. Valentine, can you tell us a little bit about the Wheaton Sons roster, or Blue Lobster? You can sort of flip a coin, and Les Force gets to explain the other one before we start looking at the matchups in the bottom left here.
Wheaton Sons came in last season. They were a very, very, very solid team. And what I'm curious about is how they're going to come into this season. Last season, I definitely feel like they wanted to play further, right? They lost 2-0 to Girk's crew after a solid round 1 win over the Live Wires. But I think they're kind of hungry to rectify that. And I think that hunger is going to be very important because I think the door is wide open for them now, right? Excuses for them, I imagine, like they maybe in the back of their heads are like, well, if we have to go against this steamroller of a team, right, and Sisters of the Loam, that's a tough break, but they've got a fresh start, and obviously that's going to be tough in and of itself, right? It's one thing. It's one thing to have to face an undefeated team. I feel like it's a completely different thing to try and play the team that beat the undefeated team.
Yeah,
that's So I think they're gonna have a chip on their shoulder because they want to get through, and they had a particularly banger series against Fail and Feed. You know, both ADCs putting in just shy of 20 kills, in game one of the series. But yeah, very excited.
Yeah, and I mean, like Weezensen's sort of literally getting a fresh start into this quarterfinals matchup that they've got going on there. Not to, I don't know, I like puns.
Oh,
Boo,
tomato,
boo.
tomato, tomato,
Where's the,
tomato. I thought it was pretty good.
yeah,
It was good, but I won't admit it. It was good, but I won't admit it.
All
Like,
right.
I'll
Well,
die.
we can sit here with that denial of reality. It's okay. A little a little delulu on a Sunday is never a bad thing. Les Force, can you tell us a little bit about this Blue Lobster match team and what Mr. Chedda's party bus full of baddies has waiting for them after their triumphant victory over the Five Musketeers?
So I am personally, Blue Lobster is a new team to the league. They're not a team that I had to face. They're not a team that I had the chance to scrim this season. They are one of those pot one teams. So on paper, with the ranks, they should be kind of our like upper echelon of opponents. Kind of taking a look at their schedule to kind of see like how they got here into this. I believe they're in the 10 spot. So kind of in the middle of the pack. They weren't able to take down Buttermilk. They weren't able to take down Team Popo, the Manorites. But they have beaten a couple playoff teams. Silver Song Chaos. They beat Subhuman Resources. So most of their matchups have been kind of against these playoff caliber teams. So coming in, middle of the pack, considering that, is pretty solid. As far as like players who stand out in particular, kind of like their highest point players, would be both named Void. You've got Void Shinigami and Void Jeff John. I'm sure I butchered that pronunciation. Looks like Jeff John is kind of like a pretty gank heavy jungler, kind of just taking like the brief look at kind of the way they like to play. It's not the highest CS numbers, but it's a lot of kills, a lot of assists, kind of that high kill participation style. Which would be interesting into Sethi, who is kind of I think they're a pretty good jungler. I think they like to play, a lot of similar stuff like that. Like the Jarvan. They play the Ivern. It's a very fun pocket pick to watch. I enjoy watching Ivern. I know that's maybe an unpopular take, but it's very fun watching. And surprisingly, a little bit mechanical, having to properly use Daisy. I have told Bear, perhaps we save the Nunu for do or die. Sethi is a big Nunu proponent. And yeah, I mean, I think Mr. Chedda's party bus, they pulled off a massive upset against the Five Musketeers, who were coming in looking super dominant. And I had told people I thought they were kind of like the best team in Financial heading into playoffs. So now the pressure's kind of on the party bus to keep up the momentum. Bears gotta lock in solo queue. They've been playing jungle. They've been playing mid lane.
They're taking a tour.
They're taking a tour in the bus. But they gotta lock in. They got a lot of good players though. I certainly don't think that the 15 seed is like indicative of the players they've got on the roster. And I'll say Blue Lobster is like the slight favorite, but I definitely don't think this is like a a massive advantage for that side.
Yeah, I think it will remain an interesting matchup. So we'll have to see how things shake out there. Let's pivot over to the bottom left side of the bracket here. Let's take a look at Team Popo versus Silver Song Chaos. Team Popo, very familiar with Financial. I believe they have a championship under their belt. The no strangers to upsetting number one seeds themselves. And then Silver Song Chaos, who, first of all, I like that team name. I just think it flows nicely. Who also have a bit of a history here for the LBLCS. So tell me about these two teams. Tell me about this matchup. What can we expect?
Team Popo isn't a team that pops off paper. I'll do my Team Popo spiel like I do every time they get brought up. Not a team that pops off the page. They have some strong players, right? And Salmon and Long Cannons, obviously, but their jungler, top laner, and support are also all great. What they do best is fight you, right? They can be down, they'll fight you. If they're even, they're going to fight you. And if they're ahead, they're absolutely going to fight you. And that's how they win games, right? Sometimes they have very questionable laning phases. Sometimes they have just bad laning phases. Happens to the best of us. But that will not stop them from taking good fights. Their communication is top tier, and that is what wins them games more often than not. Um, that being said, Silver Song Chaos is also very scary, right? They're a mix of last season's High Alert Nightmares and in Chaos, right? And you have LBLCS veterans and kind of legends in players like Clickbait Godded and Clickbait God. And I don't know if Banana Man is starting on this roster, but also a very solid player that is on the roster and able to make an appearance if need be. But Clickbait God probably having a very good season among everybody else on the roster, like Chance and Lettuce Plate, Starstro as well. Um, and Jay Cully, right? So many solid players on this roster. I think you have to respect them. And this is a matchup between pot one and pot 4, right? Silver Song Chaos came into the season, big names and a very strong blah blah blah. Coming in very strong at the beginning of the season with a lot of big names. And then Popo obviously always comes in very low key, but kind of ended up on opposite sides of the bracket. And now Popo's kind of looking like the favorite for this one. And we'll see how they do because last time they were favored team. I believe they were the second seed in their group and took down the undefeated Project Volatility. And their first ever appearance, they took KFC to 5 games. So now they are firmly, one of the most favorite teams in the league. We'll see how they deal with that because I think that's a different type of pressure.
Yeah, very much so, and it's like the underdogs have become the overdogs in a lot of ways. So it'd be very interesting to see. I don't know. Don't look into that phrase too much. I don't understand what I say anyway. As we look a little bit further down this bracket, we see Boom What Up versus the Mana Rights. I believe Boom What Up, a team coming in, also assuming a losing record, much like Apollo Gaming. I could be wrong about that, but I think I'm right. Actually, you know what? I'm right. Whatever. I don't care. Don't fact check me. You don't need to. Uh, so tell me about these two teams here. Boom What Up being our heroes to help us save the league. And then the Mana Rights coming in as the underdog.
I'll go ahead and jump in. I don't think Boom What Up. I'm not even gonna say it. I think Boom What Up is the most criminally under talked about team that went top 4 this year. Yeah, I think this team is awesome. I think they're really good. I think their top laner is one of the best players in the league, bar none. Like, if that guy gets Ornn, get out of the way. The train is on its way. Okay. I think their bot lane plays a ton of fun picks. They're really fun to watch. Their games are really wacky, but they always find a way to win. On the other side of that, Mana Rights has really good solo laners also. So I am super excited for this matchup because it's kind of like strength on strength, where you're like, someone's going to have to give, when a unstoppable force meets an immovable object type of thing. And I think Mana Rights in the 13 seed doesn't properly regulate how good they were this year. I think they played a pretty tough schedule throughout the year. And so I think this matchup could be a trap matchup. But Boom What Up? They are 8-0. They are an undefeated team. Yeah, I'm super hyped for this one. I cannot wait to watch this.
Yeah,
And I will say,
Yeah.
sorry to jump in, Jack. I did play against some Mana Rights, and I was just gonna echo Malfeasance in particular. Really was kind of I think probably my favorite game I played this season was game 1 against the Mana Rights. It was really fun. It was a Samira, Lilia, Nautilus comp, and every single play that we had, it always ended with us trying to kill Malfeasance on the Victor, pumping out the damage. Really, really strong mid laner. I think that's the team with Jack McRocks, if I remember, as well in the top lane, kind of like Vega was saying. Yeah, I definitely don't think the 13 seed is kind of like I said about Mr. Chedd's party bus, not super indicative of this team's skill. This shows kind of how strong Financial was kind of in this top end.
Yeah. And I'll say, Boom What Up is going in here. To me, I think if you're a member of Boomlet Up, obviously they can be looking at the game ahead of them. But if I was them, I'd be looking forward and saying the pressure's on us right now because 1 and 2 are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And Buttermilk has to week right now. The expectation is that they go fight Buttermilk in the finals. So that's obviously being a high seed is enough pressure. I think more pressure has been piled on with the other top seeds falling down.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very exciting. Especially with the top seeds falling down, saves Vega from eating a tablespoon of dirt, which
true.
I'm certain he and
I
his
live.
microbiome are very excited about. I don't want to imagine what that feels like coming out the other end. Speaking
gonna-
of
we're gonna
the
watch-
other end,
Thank God.
we can take a look at the other side of the bracket here. Lustforce, this is
Not
a
speaking of
particularly
the other end.
this is a particularly it's got a personal touch here on this side of the bracket. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your matchup tonight versus the Rat Kingdom Princesses?
Yeah, obviously, a family torn apart. You've got, the Rat Kingdom used to be under the TV banner. They've since spread their wings and have flown. Rucha, honorary cousin of myself and youngster Joey. So we've actually got a family battle on our hands tonight. Hopefully this civil war goes a little smoother than the last time we had a civil war take place.
Yeah, I was just mentioned that. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Should be fun. I think we should be locked in. But just kind of depends how Papa Doge and youngster Joey if they decide to be lovers or enemies tonight. Usually when it's the latter, things go a little better.
The latter would make them enemies.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ah.
He's like, I know what I said.
Thrive under pressure.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, it's like
I know what I
Buttermilk
said.
lifestyle. I mean, we put them under pressure, because that's
No,
what we
there's
do.
no pressure.
No, there's a ton of pressure now.
We've
Speaking of
already
the pressure,
overperformed.
Speaking of the pressure that you're feeling there, Vega, as you're looking at this TV versus Rat Kingdom Princesses matchup, what are some of the things that you're going to be paying attention to, as considering you are coaching the Buttermilk roster, if I remember correctly? You can say as much or as little as you feel comfortable, but preferably more.
I mean, obviously, we'll be watching it very intently to see who comes out of that series. I think both rosters are really strong. I mean, we beat both of them already, but then, like I said earlier, like when you beat a team, they get all the prep off that. When you lose, you get a lot more information out of losing than you do winning. It was a lot harder to adjust yourself for a team who's been able to watch you. And even if you're sitting a week out, I can tell you right now, I saw Lustforce post about his champion pool and their win rates. That's a scary thing to see when you're scouting a team. If someone has like 7 champions above 60% win rate and like 20 games, it is hard to prep. Personally, Rat Kingdom has had a bit of like roster changes over the last couple weeks, so a little bit harder for me to get a read on relative level, things like that. Volatility is the bane of Milk Esports and has been for several seasons. So I would be very scared if Lustforce were to win this series. But honestly, either of these teams are scary. So if they could just somehow do like a 1-1 dual forfeit, that would be the ideal situation.
Yeah, I mean, a nice little 1-1 dual forfeit, I'm certain would be a very welcome thing. But no, unfortunately, you do actually have quite a lot of pressure. There's a lot riding on this Buttermilk team.
Saying this.
And
It's not like
so,
we're in
it'll
finals
be
and
very
we might
exciting.
never win a title. It's
Well,
not like we made it
you
all
could-
the way and then lost. It's not like that. We're just in
I'm
the
just
second
saying,
round,
I've been
okay?
forged.
We're
I've been forged in the fire
We're
of
just-
disappointment and pressure.
Is it worse
Vega, every chance could be your last. Think about it.
Is it worse? Is it worse to make it to finals and lose or never make it?
Probably never make it.
And lose.
I feel like losing.
That's
in
a
finals
good
is better.
question.
That is a great
Yeah,
question.
I will discuss. We should discuss this on a later booth.
On
Actually,
another booth. We'll put some stakes to it or something like that.
The anatomy of an edger.
That about wraps us up for the financial team. As we look ahead to this executive bracket, which is almost done. Our executive teams have been very prudent about scheduling their matches. So we've got our finals matchup ready to go here with Omega versus Coffee House. What are the big takeaways here that we're seeing in this bracket?
Biggest thing is for me, like the 1 and 2 seed are the teams that are in the finals. So this is going to be their match against each other. I mean, it's kind of been one of those weird where it plays out actually as is. I'm right for us this, right? Yeah, okay. Had to recheck. I saw Val do like a head-on-hand thing, and I was like, oh god, here I go again, just saying something
Oh
that's
no, I was
blatantly
just
wrong. But yeah, I do think that matchup is incredibly hype, right? Because we already saw them play out in the regular season. I believe. Did Coffee House win?
I think so.
Or
I'm going back
Yeah,
to
Coffee.
double check. But yeah,
Hang on, I'm
pretty
pulling
sure
up too.
Coffee-
Yeah, I think Coffee. Oh, they 2-1. Coffee House
2-1,
did win
2-1.
2-1, which with the theme we talked about already is like when you beat a team once and then you meet them again. This is, I believe, yeah, best of 5. So best of 5 is a whole different beast. You know what I mean? A 2-1 and best of 3 is one thing. That could very easily be a 3-2 and best of 5 of another team winning.
Mm-hmm.
So I am insanely hyped for this matchup. Also because both teams are coming in off of 2-0s. They beat the two teams in semifinals pretty handedly, and
Mm-hmm.
finals looks to be clearly the two best teams are going to play each other.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this matchup. Coffee House being regulars in the low budget LCS, Omega returning from their season prior. A lot of good people on both of these rosters. It's hard to pick, who you want to root for on this one, but I think it's going to end up becoming a really exciting matchup. Les versus Valentine. Anything that you guys would want to add to our commentary about this executive executive bracket.
You messed up.
I made a mistake about this
Now-
executive bracket here.
Now I want to check before I spread complete misinformation.
Sure.
Why would you do that?
Why would you do
Well,
that?
it's just
Why would you do that? Just
it's like
This
my
is
credibility.
America.
My credibility.
Just
is
say
on the
whatever
line,
you
right?
want. Let's
Oh,
force.
just speak. Okay, no. I went back and had to look to double check. Beginning of the season, Omega had a different roster. You know, they did not have the mid laner who was kind of the superstar in financial last season in Princeton.
Mhm.
Princeton is back for playoffs, and Princeton picked up where they left off. Had a very very strong series against Big Dig Secret, and that is no small feat. Prater Zach, I think, is like a masters level mid laner, and to just come in off the rip, do that, that's pretty impressive. So I'm curious to see if Princeton's able to keep that, slide right into that spot and just pick up where they left off in a pretty tough spot against Coffee House, against Blue Card Hype, who is a very very strong mid laner in their own right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's definitely exciting to see these star players come back, and so we'll see if the Ivy League training is enough to get them over the coffee house, or if they're feeling the effects of the funding cuts at this point. Tell me a little bit about this coffee house roster, Val, and some of the players. Let's first started to peek into talking about Blue Card Hype a little bit, but who are some of the other players on this roster that somebody uninformed might want to know about? You're muted.
You're muted. You're muted, Bell. You're muted.
A lot of these are familiar faces. Right, I think most people in the LBLCS will recognize Popova, right? If you have been watching Executive for multiple seasons, you'll probably also recognize Blue Car Hype, Triple Net, and Damien, formerly Damien Martin. New face in the top lane, though, in Piggy AI. And this is a team that is very familiar with each other, right? Piggy slotted in perfectly. And it's they play a brand of very LBLCS League of Legends, which is that they solid lane, they try not to make too many mistakes, and then they come out and they look to beat you with solid team fights, with solid positioning, with kind of a bit of a scrappy nature. But I think they've one of the teams, that consistently competes, that's definitely perfected that style. It really is a matchup between I made this joke, I think, on last booth, but it is the strongest financial team of today, right? Omega but
Mhm.
we're definitely one of the strongest looking
Mhm.
teams last year's regular season, and they were the strongest team in this regular season. And Coffee House obviously won the first ever financial season, right? So, and now it almost feels it's very script storybook. I just lost my entire train of thought. It is very nice. Like, the script is led up very nicely for these two teams to play each other.
Yeah, and Omega Gaming not being any strangers to the strong lane win team fights kind of situation. So two teams with a fairly similar play style, and both very familiar with each other. So it should make it for a very exciting executive finals matchup. as we push along the standings, we can turn our attention up to our final division here, CEO, which is also a bracket that is almost all the way filled out, and also a bracket that contains a pretty big upset in it. So where do we like to start when we take a look at these teams here and how the standings have shaken out over the course of this playoff season?
I mean, I think your eyes have to start with the most recent game, Rat King Emperors versus Lane Zero Eaters of Glue. I think the general consensus from a lot of the people who play in CEO and a lot of people who kind of pay attention to the league, they felt like it was kind of Lane Zero's league to lose. They felt like they were the strongest team. They have like this really strong bot lane. I mean, Bondi, I think what is like playing as pro players in solo queue. Like this guy's insane, having an insane season. And in game one, I mean, they kind of just ran the floor with the Rat King members. I mean, love them, but I mean, yeah, Mouse Dixie, Bondi popping off. But then game two seems like the Emperors kind of found this strategy, and I mean, they already know that it's, you know, maybe gonna get banned out this upcoming week, but like this Wukong Ash Seraphine Wombo combo, they're able to pilot that to a pretty strong win in game number 2, which is a pretty close game, and then they just something happened game 3. We've got an 18-minute win, again against the team that most people thought were going to be in that finals matchup. You know, the number 1 seed, only series they dropped was via an FF. So big shakeup, and I'm sure that regardless of who wins between Akuma and KFC, as we'll get to in a second, they're probably feeling pretty solid, knowing that they don't have to face Lane Zero. But at the same time, maybe they should be a little scared because this team was able to take them down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely like finding that like recipe for the win there is a fairly important thing to do. Looking at this other semifinal matchup between Akuma Strikers and the KFC Chicken Legs roster, what are some of the things that we should know about these two teams that will help us have a little bit more information for our potential finals matchup for whatever team wins out on this side of the bracket versus the Rat Kingdom Emperors?
I believe looking at Akuma's only loss this season was Lane Zero, I believe. And so I know if you're on the side, if you're a fan of Akuma, you're probably feeling pretty good about that because Lane Zero's out of the picture. But you do still have the, giant task that is defeating Earl King in semifinals, on the horizon there. I think that this has a big buildup of, if you're Akuma, you cannot be overlooking this match just because, you're looking ahead to finals. Lane Zero is not going to be there. This has all the trappings of a trap match, that exactly the kind of thing that TFC would win, right? Exactly the kind of match where all of a sudden you'd be like, oh, TFC wins this, and now they're against Rat Kingdom in the finals, and Earl King does it again. But yeah, I am really excited for this. I know on paper Akuma looked like strongest team throughout the season. They've looked very good. But yeah, if you're a fan of Akuma, you're praying that they are not overlooking this matchup.
Yeah, and you could really never count Earl King out. I think that's sort of like a big piece of this as well. So we'll have to see how things continue to go. What are some other things that we want to know about this bracket before we close our show for today?
Any future LBLCS competitors in chat. Okay. Before I say this is entirely a joke, but throw your last series so you're not the 1 seed.
Right.
Because clearly it's bad juju.
Yeah, it's certainly it's a cursed spot, right?
Cursed.
It's like it's like the 13th floor of the hotel or something like that. It's like, all right, well, we don't want to be first seed, so we'll end up throwing. So we'll see what happens. We're leader saying 2% hasn't lost yet. Smile. Yep, yet smile. So we'll see what happens there. And Vega's coaching that team, so really anything can happen.
What?
No, don't
No,
worry
he's
about it.
he's coaching Soy.
Oh, my apologies.
Soy and buttermilk. Soy and buttermilk.
Soy and buttermilk.
As the Mike Tomlin of OBLCS, we made the playoffs and my job is done.
Exactly.
Be very Mike Tomlin of you.
Well, that about wraps us up for today for this little playoffs update episode here. You can find some of us in the Red Zone channel on the LBLCS Discord for a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah. You will catch it immediately after booth. I am streaming the minorities versus Boom. What up? Literally, as soon as
We've got to find
dude,
another
the
way.
Manorites. God damn it!
Someone else just said that to me this week. They're like, "Hey, have you guys scouted the minorities?" And I'm like, "It's the Manorites. It's not."
Okay, for what it's worth, I'm saying the minorities, not the minorities. I at least I'm getting the man part right. I'm just not getting the O right.
We're trending in the right direction.
We're
trending in the right direction. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. So you can catch us in the Red Zone channel. I'll be there. Val will be there. I think Lesforce has a game, and Vega has a prior engagement because he doesn't care about us as much. So we'll see.
Yeah,
what ends up happening.
Vegas, by the way, Vega will be assisting the watch party by streaming Spoiled Milk.
Oh, that's true. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna plug anything, but no, I'm not gonna plug anything. Shout out to my double up partner. We got to announce that we're in.
Oh yeah, that's true. You see the other.
We're in, baby.
We're in there. So the LBTFT. So if you're listing the LCS content over the summer, the LBTFT teams and double up duos were announced, and Vega and I are going to try our luck sending Vegars back and forth to each other, despite the fact that neither of us are going Vega or Techie reroll.
We have several rules for each other. I'll only spoil one since we have limited time, which is that if someone is sent a 5 cost, they have to use it.
You have to
they cannot send
it
it back.
You're not allowed to send it back.
Put it on the board.
Slot it in, in some sort of way. So we'll see how that strategy ends up paying off for us. Alrighty. Is there anything anybody would like to say as we close out our show?
Just again, if you got nothing going on tonight, go tune into Red Zone. I mean, there's 10 games, so the more that we can get streamed for people to watch, the better. Again, I would love to tune in, but we'll see. Maybe if I get 2-0'd real quick, I can hop in and spectate one of the later games.
All right.
All right. Well, your mind's already somewhere else, so we'll hope to see everybody there. And just remember that it takes 2 to tango. So everybody have a great rest of your night. Be safe. And tomorrow begins a new week, Monday, best day of the week by far. So it's a new beginning every single time, which I'm looking forward to it, and we get to all start it together. Alrighty, that's our show. We'll be back in a couple of weeks to close out our playoff analysis and see just how poorly we did when we predicted these teams at the start of the season. I'm Jackie Boy. This is Val, Vega, and Lestforce, and some of us will see you in Red Zone. Some of us won't. Some of us are playing. For all the teams that are playing, good luck, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the Red Zone. All right, good night, everybody.